Hello everyone, welcome to Power Hour, and today's topic is how to build a Power Apps modern form with the modern tab control so that you have a tabbed form. Let's get started. All right, I'm Laura Rogers and this is Power Hour. I've been doing this show for about 11 years. It's geared towards business users and power users in Microsoft 365. We don't do anything super technically complicated. And it's Wednesdays at 11 Central, and we have a live chat where you can join and talk to us. And of course, our chat is taking place in Microsoft Teams. So wherever you're watching this, there's a form that you can fill out so that we can invite you to this tenant to be able to chat with us in Teams just as we go. So we basically, once you've requested and once you've been invited, then all you have to do is just open Teams as if, just your work Teams like you would normally would, and then you're going to click your name up at the top right and toggle over to IW Mentor Power Hour. So IW Mentor is the company I created. It is online training for all these Microsoft 365 products. So let's go ahead and get started. You all vote. I send the newsletter out the day before and you all vote for the topic. So you all voted for the Power Apps tabbed form. So no further ado, I'll go ahead and share my desktop. Let's see, Power Apps, there we go. Okay, so this is a Power App. This is purchase requests, and I created this in a previous Power Hour. It's just something where we were learning about the toolbar control in Power Apps. So that's the main thing that I was demonstrating in that other Power Hour about the Power Apps toolbar. So I'll just go ahead and use this app to show you how to do this whole tabbed form thing. So when I preview this app, I can see I'm on this is just the main screen of the app. And I can see some purchase requests, and then I just want to fill out a new purchase request. And the idea behind the tabs is going to be if you have a form with a lot of fields. So I created a good bit of fields. It's not a ton. I've seen forms, I've been working with these online forms with Microsoft products for about 20 years. So I've seen forms that have 100 fields in them. So this example is really going to be for those larger, longer forms where you need to have kind of break it up because it's going to be just a lot of screens for people to be filling in fields. And there are a lot of different ways to go about this. I think we have another Power Hour and a blog post I wrote on how to do a form across screens where you're actually creating separate Power Apps screens for each part of the form. That's just another approach. So this is going to be how to create a tab interface so that you have using the modern tab control. So we've done other Power Hours on other ways to create tabs. So what we're doing in the past was we were creating tabs that were just buttons that just kind of were shaped to look like tabs. But this is Microsoft created an actual tab control, and it's really easy to use. So it's a lot less steps than we used to have to do with the putting the tabs in, creating a gallery and doing all these other convoluted things. So this is going to be extremely time saving to have a tabbed form. So, okay, so this is the SharePoint list. Okay, and this is just what I'm basing the form off of. So these are just all the fields I created. And so the idea is that I want to use a tab control, and I want to put the tabs just at the top of the form. And then I want to be able to click on different tabs to go in sort of like a wizard-like fashion and go through the different parts of the form and split the form up into different little sections. So I'm going to go ahead and go to plus and do tabs. See, it's called a tab list. That's what the control is called. So I choose tab list. And then what you can do with a tab list is you can select a data source. So if you want to have a collection or a SharePoint list or something that lists the different names of the tabs, you could do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create just put it on top of this form, and I'm going to put a border on this form so that it looks kind of like it's sitting on top of it. So it's kind of segmented here. And then the first thing you do is you decide this is just called tab list. I can just leave it. I can give it this name, tab list 1. That's fine. You're going to decide what your different sections need to be called. And then you can easily just type the different names of your sections here in this area. Unless you have a different data source that you want to use, it's the items property. So it works just like any items property on any other controls in Power Apps. So I'm just going to say, for the first section, this is going to be called PR. This is a purchase request info. And then I'll have a section called vendor. And then I'll have a section called details. And of course, your form could have lots of different sections. I'll just create 3 for this one. And then the next step that I have to do is I have to decide where I want each of these controls to show. So the way I can get to this data, like how do I know what somebody has clicked on in this tab control? That's the data that I need to know to be able to decide how to hide and show things. So just to show you the kind of the way the data looks is I'm just going to go ahead and put this little text box here, and just for you to have some visibility into how this control works. So this is called tab list 1. So I want to reference this tab list 1 dot selected dot value. So whatever I select, PR info, vendor, details, it's the name of the tab control dot selected dot value. And so that's what's going to give me that word of, the different verbiage. And so this is the data that I'm going to use when I'm setting up all these different cards on the form to make them hide and show. All right, so I don't really need this, but I'm just going to copy that. And what I'm going to do is use it on every card. So I select the card itself. And then after I select the card, I want to go to the visible property of every card. So this is kind of tedious to go through every single card and set up when I want it to show. But I'm going to say the value equals PR info. And so that field is going to be visible when the tab PR info is selected. That's how it works. So if that's all you needed to know, that's the basics of how it works, and you could just stop watching this video right now. But so what you're going to do is you have to go to every single card and set up all these lovely little sections and basically decide which one needs to hide and show. So I can just take this verbiage that I just typed in the visible property, and I can just go to the visible property of just every other control here. And so since this statement here, this formula is just going to evaluate to true or false. So it just decides whether it's going to evaluate to true or false. Can you select multiple cards? Let me see. No, wait, I can't select it on here. That's always been historically one of the big pain in the butts about this. Let's see, quantity and price. Let's see, where did price go? Yeah, so you can select them over on the left. So I'm going to move price. It's not right next to quantity, so it doesn't let me use the control key. Oh yeah, there it goes. You just have to click it in a certain place. I thought it wasn't letting me use the control key. So now that I've got them both selected, then I can go to the visible property and just paste that. So then the next section I'm going to have is vendor. So you'll watch as I put the vendor information in these, you'll watch them disappear because I'm not currently on the vendor tab. So as I got to get this to let me select these. Yeah, it's just hard to do the shift and the control, just kind of it's a little wonky. Okay, go to visible. And then for this one, instead of PR info, it's going to be vendor. Okay, and then notice they just disappeared. And then the next one is going to be details, where I'll put some of these other ones like justification, budget code, priority, description, and I'll go ahead and select those too. So it's just a little awkward trying to select them all. And see, they're kind of all over the place. But it is a huge time saver to be able to do that. So budget code priority. Some of those I think I selected that I already had. I already had something set up. Okay. Visible instead of true. It's going to be, and this one's going to be details. I don't know if I would want to group the data cards. I feel like this part over here would get a little bit too messy to start putting grouping inside of grouping because they're already kind of grouped. I don't know. I don't know if I would necessarily do that. So let me go ahead and try this. Purchase request info. This is the first tab, vendor. Now it's got my 4 vendor fields, and then details, which has the rest of it. And then then the next trick is going to be to make sure that you, let's see. Yeah. No, it's not for just the modern one. It's for any the other form control that you do that. But again, it's just a little kind of sticky when you try to select them all. You just can't select them on the screen. And you just got to try a couple of times when you're selecting them on that left panel over there. But yeah, that's how it works. So what you're going to want to do, though, is put something in place to make sure that people have filled out the required fields. So that's where it can kind of be tricky when you have one of these, is that now if you have required fields, you don't want people to fill in just these 4 fields and then try to click submit. So then you kind of have to take some extra measures. So when I go to PR info and then I fill out the vendor information and then I go to details, maybe I want the submit button to only show when I'm on the details page. That's one way that you can do it. Another thing that you can do is, of course, you can have required fields. You can make them required, but if it's required and the person, and you can't see it on the screen, then they're not going to necessarily see the error of where the required field is having an error. If they're over on the details screen and they didn't fill out the title, then they're not going to be able to click submit and they won't know why. So that's where you have to kind of think of different ways to get creative with how you want your fields, your required fields, to be addressed when they get to that last stage. So we'll just come up with one way. Of course, there are probably 50 different ways that you could achieve this. I'll just show one way that you can do it, that you can just be able to see before you click submit which fields haven't been filled out that are required. So I'll go ahead and now to make it required, just to officially have a field be required, you have to go to the required property of that card. And what I like to do is not make them required in SharePoint, only make them required just here using this required property. And then I like to say people are only going to fill out this form through the Power App and they're not going to go to SharePoint. They're just going through this interface. So notice that as soon as I change required to true, it's got an asterisk here. So let's go ahead. I'll try and fill one out. Go to vendor. And notice, so it does let me submit that. And let's see. Yeah, so it submitted, it submitted it successfully and then took me to the next screen. But what happens if, okay, so first of all, when I go to fill out another one thing that I have to address is that I want it to be back on here on the PR info tab right when I get to the screen. So I want that to be the default. And another thing I want to do is I want to see what happens when, like, if somebody's on the detail screen and they try to click submit, it's going to let me know that there's an error here, but you can't visually see the error here on the screen. So one creative way that I'll show you, and this is what I'll do, is I'll just show you how you can do like a summary screen that's like a summary of everything they filled in, so that you'd be able to very easily see which ones that had an error. So that's just one way. And then a more tedious way would be to have like a bunch of verbiage here down by the submit button that has a list of all the fields that they didn't fill in. So let's go ahead and first of all tackle this part where we want it to default to PR info as soon as they arrive on the screen. So this one is selected, and this one is going to be, so it's the items property, and it's got default selected items. So default selected items, I'm going to put PR info, so that that's the default thing that is selected when they arrive on this screen. And then that way, whenever they come back, it'll always just start on the first step. Lisa says fields not assigned to a tab just show on the basic form. If you don't assign any fields to a certain tab, they're just going to show on all the tabs. So it's just going to show as you click through different tabs, that same field will just always be there. So if you wanted something like the title to always show on all the different, no matter where they go, then you could just say visible is true, and then it would just always show. All right. Let's see. Yeah, you're right, Valerie. It didn't used to be a thing to select more than one card. That's awesome that you can do that now. It's a huge time saver. Things like that get very tedious in here. Okay, so one way that you can know that something has an error is this little box here that says title is required. It's parent.error basically is what the text is. But the parent of this card is this basically this field. So this, let me show you the hierarchy here. So this error message is inside of the title card, and the title card is the title field is the one that's giving the error. So therefore, all this text says is parent.error. So then what you need to do is make it so that whenever you're on that final screen, I'll show you how you can make it. So the first option is to say, how can you make the submit button just hidden unless they're on that last screen? Make sure that it just is not lit up until they get to that last screen. Oh, Lisa said my lazy way to disable the submit button until all required fields are filled in is that she just has a message that says cannot submit if data is missing in any required fields, and then the message disappears and the submit button is enabled when the form is valid. Yeah, that's a good idea. So it's the name of the form and it just indicates if it's valid or not. So the whole form being valid is one way to submit it. So we'll take a look at both of those. So I'll say, so this one is we'll just look at the display mode. So I'm going to say the display mode, this is just, if right now I have, if the purchase, basically this form is being viewed right now, it's going to be disabled. So if somebody's just looking at a form, it's not editable or anything, it's going to be disabled. Otherwise, it's going to be editable. So what I'm going to do with this one is I'm just going to say, instead of using this logic, I'm going to say if the, and I'm going to refer to that tab control again, equals details form mode dot where did it go? Hold on. Display mode, sorry. It's display mode, not form mode. Redo. Oh, redo doesn't work. Okay. Tab. Display mode dot disabled. If it equals details, it's going to be editable. Otherwise, display mode dot disabled. That's my logic. So now you can see that it's disabled because I'm not on the detail screen. So I go vendor, and then I go to details, and now submit is lit up. So, and so what Valerie is saying, I still don't think I would want people to try, and like what I could even do is I could just completely hide the submit button. And instead of going to the mode, the display mode, what I could do is I could go to the visible property and just make this completely hidden until you get to that last tab. So I'll go ahead and say, we'll just take Valerie's logic and my logic and just put them in different places. So let's see. I'll just go to visible. And it's only going to be visible if it equals details. And this error that you're seeing is just from that submission error I had a minute ago when the form hadn't been, all the fields hadn't been filled out and I tried to click submit. That's why it's still just showing an error there. So now I've changed the visible property. And now let's go ahead and go to back to display mode. And we'll do what Valerie's talking about is the name of the form, this is the purchase form, dot, and it's valid, dot valid, then it's edit, then otherwise it's display mode dot disabled. So let's go look at vendor details. Notice that it's disabled. Thanks, Valerie. And notice that I'll go ahead and this is the only required field in the whole form. So now when I go to details and all the fields have been filled in, all the required fields have been filled in, now I can click submit. So now that form with just one item in it now has been submitted. Lisa, okay, yeah, sorry. I said Lisa. I said Valerie instead of Lisa. Thank you, Lisa. I like that. So again, what I've seen other people do in the past is just other ways of doing it is just showing, like going out of your way to put all this little extra verbiage and all these little text boxes and things that show here, depending on which fields that people need to fill out. But I feel like it's much more simple the way that Lisa's talking about, that where you would just disable the button if everything's not filled in. So it just makes them do a little work. It makes them kind of look around and see what they didn't fill in yet. So, all right. See if there are any other. Yeah, any other questions? That's a pretty short one too. And this is in our training, and we also have, and we've probably done another power hour about this, is the concept of using this tab control at the top of a gallery. So what you could do is go to a gallery and have tabs at the top of the gallery to basically filter it by different things, like maybe the status or something like that, and have different tabs just filtering on a field in your list. And that way you could quickly just have a status tab or rejected tab, a status tab that has like in progress, rejected, approved as all like different tabs there. Can you customize the verbiage on the error button to say required field missing? Yeah, that would customize. Well, right now, yeah. So on the submit button, instead of just making it be disabled, that's a good idea, is we could just have actual verbiage that tells you why it's disabled. So yeah, that's a good idea. So what you can do is, I'll just say, I'll insert a text box and put this text box right here and I can make it red. Font color, no, not font, there. Red text, and make it bold. And that way we'll let people know right here why it's disabled. So then you're going to use that same concept. So the name of the form dot valid, and you're going to say, use that on the visible property. So I go visible, and I could say, it's not valid. So I want to say, oops, not. So that little exclamation mark is not valid. And then the text is, I want it to say, required fields have not been filled out. Cool. All right. And there we go. That's kind of ugly, but that's where it shows. So then I'll go ahead and when I fill out this one required field that I have, and now the message disappears. So it also probably want this message, it's kind of up to you, but you probably would only want that message to show on that last tab, when you're on that last tab before you click submit, because if I can't even see the submit button, then that doesn't necessarily make the most sense. So I'll do one more thing. I'll just basically say I want the visible property to equal the visible property of this button. So I'll call this btn submit. And then I'll say I want this to be visible when also when this is visible. So it's going to be when you're on that details tab. So I'll just take that same, there we go. And let's see. Okay, now it only shows, I had to do some little extra logic, but I'll go ahead and put an X in here and fill it out. And now the error doesn't show anymore. Yay. Okay, so now the error only shows when you're on that last tab, and it kind of explains to them why the submit button is grayed out. Let's see. I'm looking at some of the ideas that you all have. Let me see. Create a formula called something like standard error message that is in the error message piece of required cards. Often use the wonderful search and replace to change the default error message. That is kind of tedious to go change in every card, change what the error message says, but yeah. All right. Cool. So that's pretty basic. You could go to extra steps to have maybe a next button that actually will make it move from tab to tab. I don't necessarily have the bandwidth in this power hour to do a lot of kind of add-ons to this one, but check out, we've got several other power hours about kind of the other ways that we used to do tab controls that were a little harder. If you still happen to be using the classic controls and you haven't switched to the modern controls yet, and yeah, just give it a shot. It's really easy. You just have to add the modern tab control and then just define on each card when they need to be visible. All right, thanks everybody for coming. We're going to have another power hour next week. Let's go to IW Mentor. Let's see. I've been working on the web page. We'll go to schedule, and this is today right here. And then we have I am probably going to also just have power hour in the middle of like my lunch hour during teaching the instructor-led the all week Power Apps and Power Automate course next week. So we'll still have power hour then, but that's where you can see. And you could see that I'll be speaking at several conferences, Las Vegas, Austria, and Seattle. And thanks everybody for coming. I'll see you next time.